Hi, everyone. We hope you guys are having a great day out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is Mr. Tiska with you once again. And once again, I'm joined by Mrs. Kraft. Mrs. Kraft, how are you?
I'm so excited today because I get to talk like I was in France.
Oh, it's an exciting day once again.
Yes.
And we also have Miss Hop with us. Miss Hop, how are you?
I'm excited because I get to listen.
Yeah. All right, guys. So today we're going to continue with Chapter 4, Section 3.
And the first main idea that we're going to talk about is main idea number 3. France and Spain help the Patriots fight the British.
Okay, so going back in time to the last screencast you heard, you learned all about Saratoga and how it was a huge victory for the Americans. So at this point, I would like to tell you a little story about Benjamin Franklin and the King of France. So the Americans knew that we could not win this war. Let's be real. Britain had the best Navy in the entire world. And you know what we had? Nothing. Does anybody's dad, uncle, grandpa have a boat? Because that's our Navy. Because we got nothing. All right? So we know that we need help. So we go to the King of France and...
Your Majesty, it is I, Benjamin Franklin. Oh, it is so great to be in your gracious presence. I come here and I humbly ask you for your help with this war.
Monsieur Franklin, there are so many things that the French must consider, and one of the major things is the fact that we do not think that these Americans can win the war against Britain.
You would be absolutely right for thinking that, Your Grace. However, I would like to inform you that we just defeated General John Burgoyne's army at Saratoga.
Oh, sacre bleu! That is fantastic news. The French, we would love nothing more than to have their revenge against the British after they beat us in the French and Indian War. So, viva la France, viva la America. We will help you. We will send you the Navy. We will give you the soldiers. We will help the Americans. And together we will defeat the king. All right, so that's exactly how it kind of went down. Probably not as fun as that, but Benjamin Franklin does talk the king into it. And the king, of course, does not want to risk losing to England again. He's already lost once. And he's like, yeah, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, don't want to do it again. So if it wasn't for the Battle of Saratoga, the King of France would never, ever have joined us and helped us out. Now, he was not the only Frenchman to help us. There is a man named the Marquis de Lafayette. Lafayette. If you've seen Hamilton, he's a big part of it. But anyway, he is also a Frenchman, and he gave $200,000 of his own money, and he volunteered in the Continental Army. And I'm just throwing this out there. The Marquis de Lafayette becomes BFFs with George Washington, which is another one of those foreshadowing things about our man Benedict Arnold.
Yeah, because Washington really respects Marquis de Lafayette, because Marquis de Lafayette, he's not the type of guy to just sit in the background and give orders. He is also one of those guys who likes to fight on the front lines.
Love him. Marquis de Lafayette. All right, now, he was not the only person that helped us. Tell us about von Steuben, or should I say von Steubenet.
So, Baron Friedrich von Steuben was a Prussian. Now, just so you guys know, Prussia is a country that no longer exists. I'm not misspeaking. It's not Russia. It's actually more like present-day Germany. And he is actually going to help train Washington's army at Valley Forge. He's actually going to teach them how to use bayonets. That's why Mrs. Kraft gave him that lovely nickname. Before he showed up, they were actually using the bayonets as cooking tools. And for those of you that don't know, I probably should have led with this, but bayonets are the knives that you put on the top of your muskets and you use them for stabbing. Yeah, they were using those as cooking tools before Baron von Steuben showed up. So at Valley Forge, he's going to do a tremendous amount to train the Patriots, and Ms. Hoff's going to talk more about that in a second, and then I'm going to continue with my story on him because I got a little bit more to say. But one other person I want to mention is Bernardo De Glvez, who was the Spanish governor of Louisiana. He sent supplies to the colonists and helped seize the British posts or forts from Louisiana to Pensacola, Florida. So he's going to gather together a group of forces, and they're going to take over those British forts in the South.
Now, before you start, Ms. Hopp, I just want to throw out two other names that were huge helps in this same category of help from Europe. We had, for all of our Polish friends, I know I'm not saying this right, Thaddeus Kosciuszko is kind of how an American pronounces it, but it's like Tadeusz Kosciuszko. And he helped to train the soldiers, and another man named Vladimir Pulaski. And we have Pulaski Avenue right in town. There used to be a Pulaski Bank. He also helped. He was, I think, an engineer that helped in moving troops and forts and all kinds of good stuff. So there was other people that the book doesn't mention, and those are just a couple names that I wanted to throw out there.
All right. Main idea 4. The winter at Valley Forge tested the strengths of Patriot troops. So George Washington spent the winter of 1777 to 1778 in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. He's leader of the Continental Army. They're very low on supplies. Washington and his 12,000 men settle in for a nice winter. Not. So 2,000 of his soldiers died from disease and malnutrition. Many of these soldiers didn't even have shoes or adequate clothing. Imagine it snowed, we're off from school, you run outside without any shoes on, and your parents yell at you to get back in the house. Now, you don't have shoes for a whole winter. Yikes. The troops suffered through this brutal winter. They have shortages of food, clothing, and shelter. Continental Army winds up surviving, but like I said, 2,000 die. And during this winter, they were trained to become better soldiers, which is what Mr. Tiska was leading into before.
That's right, Ms. Hoff. And they were trained under Baron von Steuben. As I mentioned before, he trained them how to use bayonets. He also trained them how to march together as one, and he trained them day in and day out. And he actually turned Washington's army into a disciplined fighting force. Now, he also had a little secret. He was an imposter. He wasn't who he said he was. He claimed to be this baron, this high-ranking military official from Prussia. That wasn't him. He was actually a low-ranking private. And here's where it really gets interesting. Washington found out. Washington found out that he lied to him. Washington found out that he was an imposter. Washington found out that he wasn't who he claimed to be. So you know what Washington did? You know what he did? You know what he did? Did he fire him? Did he put him in prison? Did he kill him?
Tell me.
He promoted him. He promoted him. He said, you know what? I don't care that you lied to me. I don't care that you're not who you said you were. You did exactly what I wanted you to do. You trained my army. You made them a disciplined fighting force. And for that, I say thank you, sir.
Booyah.
So, as you can see, with Valley Forge, the Patriots, the Continental Army, they're just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Meanwhile, the British Army, they're in Philadelphia and they're partying. They're going to taverns. They're going to plays. They're not training at all. So it's kind of interesting. At Valley Forge, the Continental Army is getting stronger. Patriots getting stronger. But the British, meanwhile, they're getting a little weaker and a little weaker and a little weaker. We'll have to see how that works out later on. But now we're going to move over to the war at sea and in the West.
So main idea 5, the war continued at sea and in the West.
So as I mentioned before, if your family had a boat, that was part of our Navy. The Americans actually built 4 warships, and they adapted merchant ships, and we had a huge Navy. Well, if you consider 8 ships huge.
and by the way, Mrs. Krause says they adapted into warships. They basically just put a cannon on it.
That's it. Hello, that is now a warship. And we kind of knew there was no way that we could go face to face against the British Army. So we decided to be a little bit more strategic. And we attacked the supply base for the British ships in the Bahamas. And then we would attack their supply ships. There was one situation where we did have a full out bang bang between an American ship, the Bonhomme Richard, and the British ship, the Serapis. Mr. Tiska, you want to tell us about it?
So, yeah, the John Paul Jones made a lot of enemies with the British because he was so good at attacking those supply bases, and he caused so many problems for the British that the Serapis was given the mission of destroying John Paul Jones. So the two ships are going to meet and they're going to battle, and the Serapis is going to attack and attack and attack, and they virtually almost destroy John Paul Jones and his ship. So the captain of the Serapis, he's all confident. He's like, I got this. This guy is nothing. I got him. I don't know what all the fuss is about this guy. So he gets up and he says, John Paul Jones, has your ship struck? Which basically means, John Paul Jones, do you surrender? And John Paul Jones, he shouts back,
I have not yet begun to fight.
And about a couple hours later, guess who wins? John Paul Jones. That's right.
JPJ.
He defeated the Serapis, and it was because of him and other sailors like him that the Patriot Navy actually ended up winning the war at sea. FYI on John Paul Jones, he's going to go on to become the father of our Navy.
I love him. Such a good guy. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Tiska.
While all that's going on, we also have the war in the West. Now, when we say the West, we don't mean California. We mean west of the original 13 colonies. That's what we mean. Now, for the Patriots, a man by the name of George Rogers Clark, he's going to lead the Western campaign. He's going to be in charge of a militia group called the Over Mountain Men, and they captured the British trading village of Kaskaskia. Did I say that right?
Yes, you're good.
Excellent. Which is in Illinois in 1778. And they also won the Battle of Vincennes in 1779. And I know Mrs. Kraft has more to say about that.
This is such a cool story. This is where brains can beat brawn. So he actually fools the British into thinking that he has way more soldiers than he actually does. I love this trick. So what he does is, he surrounds the fort, and he has a lot of flags. That's right. You heard me say flags. So he's going to beat him with a flag. So anyway, he fires a lot of shots, and he says to all the soldiers, make as much noise as you can. Wah, 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 wah. And everybody's like crazy, going loud. And they've surrounded the fort, and the people inside the fort are like, oh my God, there's like 1 million of them out there. We're going to die. We're going to die. So they come out, and I just wish I could have been there to see their faces when they see that George Rogers Clark does not have this massively huge army. He's got like a couple of guys, and the British come out and they're like, no, did we just surrender to that? The answer is yes. Go brains.
So George Rogers Clark did have some success, but overall, the British are actually going to be more successful in the West than the Patriots. And then the war is going to move on, and we're going to talk about that on a different screencast. Mrs. Kraft, anything else you want to add?
Aren't you going to tell them who George Rogers Clark is related to?
I almost forgot. Thank you so much for reminding me. Yes, so George Rogers Clark is actually related to somebody really important that we're going to learn about in Chapter 8, William Clark of Lewis and Clark, the two men that explored the Louisiana Purchase. But that definitely is the story for another screencast.
Yay.
Ms. Hoff, anything else you want to add?
Nope. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a wonderful day, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.